Good news.
Amen.
No snakes at sea. Above the snake line.
I saw one or two though on the ship, but anyway. I'm just saying.
Don't tell them. It's going to be big trouble. Hey. Your dad was a physics teacher. Yeah. Just like, where's Ted Newman? There's Ted.
Oh, I know Ted.
Yeah. He's a good physics. He got the Einstein Award from the American physics folks. So he's pretty good. Your dad was a physics teacher. He lived up in Indianapolis with your mom. They came back down to North Carolina to integrate the schools, and inspired by the March on Washington in 1963. And your dad taught physics in the school he integrated. Your mom is still there. How old is she?
82.
You got to move that mic.
Yeah, 82.
82. And what does she say?
Well, she says that she's going to work until she feels like leaving, since they didn't want her to come there in the first place. She's kind of like these feisty ladies on the ship.
So I think it is fair to say that while you suggest that this thing has been in the works for 5-8 years, there's some evidence that this thing has been in the works for 50 or 80 years. You are rooted in some tradition.
Well, you know, I heard somebody earlier mention Jeremiah, that scripture about before you were in your mother's womb, I knew you. What that was, the prophetic piece of that was that it is a sense that we come born with some purpose. We may find it or it finds us. I'm born 2 days after March on Washington. The joke in my family was that I waited to see, how were you there? Were you old enough to be there?
I was old enough. I was not actually in attendance.
The joke in my family is that these white and black people were coming together and I needed to hold up, wait a minute, and see what was going to happen. You know, my heritage is I'm Tuscaroran, black and white. All of that is in my genealogy. In fact, my father, one of his first acts of rebellion was not to allow them to put Negro on my birth certificate. And it was a big fight about that in the hospital.
This is in Indiana.
This is in Indiana. Because he actually went to St. Augustine. First he went to the Navy, went to St. Augustine, got a degree in science, general science and physics from St. Augustine, taught in Warren County, Georgia. Then left, got a call to ministry, went to CTS and went to Butler. So he combined theology and social work, got masters in both areas and did some doctoral work in education. But he said, no, he said, you're going to own, on this piece of paper, you will own all of who he is. So diversity has always meant something before I even knew it. My father and mother were called. My mother's also a trained pianist. She was trained by one of the top pianists in Indiana years ago. He got a call from E.B. Wilkins in Roper, North Carolina. By the way, there's some history that Roper almost became Selma. So I don't have time to get into that. It's a small look at it. And he called him and said, Reverend Barber, they called him Doc, said, Doc, you got to come home. He said, why? He said, because schools are still segregated in North Carolina. Now, this is 10 years after Brown.
And also, North Carolina was thought of as a more advanced state.
Right. And I often, when people say that on national media, I say, you just really don't know. You know, North Carolina was the only state that impeached the governor for taking on the claim in 1800. So it wasn't until 1971, after the Swan case, that you really had integration in North Carolina. In fact, early on, you had the Pearsall plan that said to people, if you don't want to go to segregated schools, we will give you a voucher.
Isn't that an interesting term?
Yeah, we'll give you a voucher to go to the school of your choice. So E.D. Wilkins called my father and said, we need you to come home. You've participated in integration in Indiana. Come home. He made a decision. He had a lot of other opportunities, was pastoring, was kind of on this upward path. Made a decision to go back to North Carolina, to Roper, North Carolina. But this was the other part of the city, John. In order for them to do that, they had to put me in segregated school. And I was their only child. I was their dream. And they made the decision that to take their place among those that would push this nation above the snake line, push a little higher, that they would place their only son into segregated kindergarten and first and second grade with the hope that they could be a part of the white and black coalition that would eventually integrate the schools in the country.
And they did.
And they did.
They succeeded.
And they did.
And this is a big part of you, because not everybody here is very active in a Christian megachurch.
Yeah.
But one of the big deals is if you are a good pastor, if you can do what you did at the close there, and kind of build it up just right, inspire some folks, you get a megachurch, you go big. But you have chosen to remain rooted in a very small town and to have a small church. To not kind of make you big, but to build movements that are big from a small place. Which sounds like it comes a lot from your parents, but it is also, you have a philosophy about this. There's a theory that you're working on.
Well, theologically, as I read all of the prophets, they went where they were needed, not where they were necessarily would get the grandiose wealth. The Jesus that I follow started his ministry in Nazareth, a place where they said nothing good would come out of, a ghetto. His first sermon was in the ghetto. It wasn't in Jerusalem. It was in the ghetto. I believe that Dr. King went to Selma. That was not a big church. Now, it happened to be a church where a lot of the more educated people went, but it was a small congregation. You can have a small ministry, but it's not a mega church, but mega ministry. So we have chosen. I've chosen to say, if I'm seminary trained, I'll say, why go everywhere else? Why not go where I'm needed? Why not go where we can build and work together? So in addition to doing civil rights, which is not an addition, by the way, because I don't understand how to be Christian without being involved in justice. So my congregation doesn't say he's pastor of this church and president of NAACP. The way they're taught is, if you're pastor of the church, why aren't you president of NAACP? I studied pastoral care and public policy. Pastoral care and public policy from a liberation standpoint, which says that if you're concerned about your people pastorally, you will speak up and with them prophetically against issues of injustice that create the need for their pastoral concerns to be addressed in the first place. So when I bury somebody who died because they didn't have health care, because they had a pre-existing condition, it's actually irresponsible, unethical, I believe, for me as a pastor, not to be on the front line fighting to get health care. And I chose to be in Goldsboro, which, by the way, the church I pastor, 130 years old, is in the county where Charles B. Aycock in 1896 gave a speech arguing for armed rebellion against Reconstruction. About 15 miles from my church, where he preached so hard and said, if we do not stop black and white people from working together in the political arena, all of our women and daughters will be under attack. And it says that when he finished that speech, that the white men there were foaming at the mouth like dogs since 1896. And by 1898, he had worked with a guy by the name of Fernhold Simmons, who led the racist Democrats at that time. And interestingly, McCall, his name was Joseph McCall, who was the owner of the News Observer.
Yeah, the media.
They put together a propaganda team, and they used cartoons because a lot of whites couldn't read. So the cartoons would show black people, politicians looking like vampires, and little white girls over in the corner. Okay? But the point is, the pastor of that church, like the church I pastored, C.R.D. Whitfield, that was his name, had 7 sons became preachers. In the 1800s, he walked to Raleigh and demanded from the legislature a change in his name. A change in his name to give him the name he wanted. He pastored 40 years. So the congregation is steeped in history. And there's a lot of history in Goldsboro. Goldsboro is the place where they put the only mental hospital for black people. And so if you were black and you were deemed in need of mental care, or if the sheriff thought you were a troublemaker and decided to arrest you and claim you had mental issues, they would send you to that hospital to isolate you and get you away. So that ground to me, though it's not a big 1,000-member church, it's fertile ground. And we've done the people there have done tremendous things. We've built 60 single-family homes for low-income persons, not apartments, ownership. Apartments for senior citizens. We have a drug dealer redemption program where every year we turn the church into a place for gangbangers and drug dealers to come in, to talk to them about getting out of that life. And one of the things I teach them is the movement. So is this something you could do better with your life than to sell death to our communities? And I could go on and on about the things from that community. So I believe that good things come out there. I believe that movements start from Montgomery up, from Greensboro up, from Birmingham up. That's what, and Dr. King said that. In his March on Washington, I often say, why don't progressives really read? I know people say, I have a dream, and that's important. He's done that, I have a dream a number of times. But what he said was, leave this big rally and go back to Mississippi, go back to Alabama, go back to the state and build up. And that's something I'm challenging progressives on, because too often we've tried to deal with this extremism from here down, helicoptering in, rather than building and supporting indigenous leadership up.
Well, you have a historic education mission that you have embraced, and that is to try and the difficult struggle of teaching Americans who've been so poorly taught this history that Reconstruction was a good thing. That Reconstruction was necessary because it was transformational. It was big, and there's deep history there. And we honestly don't have time, because we're going to get a lot of questions in here, for you to go into the whole of it. But I guarantee you there's even people in this room who think of Reconstruction as, or there's some places back there, that was sort of a bad thing, there's carpetbaggers and all sorts of bad stuff. In reality, it's pivotal in American history.
It is, and actually, as a piece online that I did with Story of America, I asked you to look at this 11 minutes on the Third Reconstruction, where I suggest that the electorate that elected President Obama, not President Obama himself, but the electorate that caused things to happen in the South that hadn't happened since Jimmy Carter, and brought together coalitions in voting that we had not seen in North Carolina, in Mississippi, and South Carolina, signaled the possibility of a third Reconstruction if we can harness all of that. Which is also why I believe that the extremists chose, before he was even inaugurated, to say we're going to shut it down.
Oh, yeah.
Because they know that in the first Reconstruction, you could say from 1868, I like to say from 1868 to 1898, give or take, because it was broken down and deconstructed in many parts before then. But if you take 1868 to 1898, that's 30 years. And I say 1898 because of the Wilmington riots, which is the only coup d'etat of its type in the nation, where duly elected blacks and white people were run out of office. 3 to 5% of Wilmington was killed, more people per capita than 9/11. And it wasn't even taught in the history books. And in pulpits in Wilmington, North Carolina, they endorsed it the Sunday before it happened, saying that we will return the government to the proper ownership of the white man, even if we have to fill up the river, Cape Fear River, with blood. But my point is, from 1868 to 1898, these 30 years, you had 3 constitutional amendments. 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, 15th Amendment, that are transformative. Why would American politics be without the 15th Amendment? Why would it be without the 16th Amendment? You had these every Southern Constitution was rewritten by 1872 with the kind of language, I wasn't reading from you some modern doctrine. I just read from you the language that's in place 104 years. We are in court now winning battles based on this document that was written 146 years ago. You had, John, this commitment to education and tax reform and certain kinds of labor rights and criminal justice from now. I'm not naive to suggest it was all encompassing. But what I am suggesting is, for instance, in North Carolina, you had this black guy named J.W. Hood who became the president of Livingstone College, and Samuel Ashton, a white Congregationalist, a black AME Zion minister. They demanded that language I just read. In fact, they demanded that public education be a right in Article 1, not Article 2, 3, 4, 5, but actually in the Declaration of Rights.
Because it is the roots of democracy.
Right.
You have to know.
That's right. And they said persons, not children, because they knew a lot of adults weren't educated. Now, it is told to us, historians about folk like Tim Tyson and others, that Samuel Ashley becomes the first superintendent of schools in North Carolina. J.W. Hood becomes the second, the assistant. The former planners, 6, 7 years after this, get together and say, we have got to defund this government, because if we keep giving them money, that J.W. Hood is going to get every Negro child in North Carolina educated. And he and Samuel Ashley are going to mess up the future. So the first arguments in North Carolina about cutting taxes was about stopping two ministers, one black, one white, from forwarding public education. How do you know that history?
A lot of people don't know a lot of this history, and but when you start to know this history, when you start to talk about it, it is why you have chosen, as somebody who could go places, to other places, you've chosen to keep this unique movement rooted in one state, as a pilot state, as a place you begin from, and in the South. And after November 4th, there were folks saying, maybe we should just give up on the South. Last Democratic senator lost, all these things. But you argue that we have to start in the South.
And have a long term. You know, they said the same thing after the Dred Scott decision to Frederick Douglass. He said, we're losing. He said, no, we lost that court battle. But every day, the movement is building. And if you want to change America, I think you got to think states, you got to think southern states. And if you can begin to build the kind of relationships we're seeing between blacks and whites and Latinos coming together, believing that if folk could change history in the 1800s, surely we're not scared of the Tea Party today. I mean, if people could walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge knowing that they could be killed by the police in public, and there would be no grand jury, or if they had that kind of faith in 1965 in this, what I call the second Reconstruction, how dare us not believe that is possible? I know it's not the same era, but there are critical moral foundations. It's kind of like shipbuilding. There are some basics to every ship. You may have some changes and nuances over time, but there are some basics, and there are some physics that don't change throughout time. You may get new insights and deeper insights, but there are some basic things that exist. And I believe, John, that if you want to change America, that the South and building state-based movements, because the extremists know that.
Oh, yeah.
They know that their last lock and hold is on the South. And that's why, as I said this real quickly, first Reconstruction, 30 years, bam, they cut it off. Then the second Reconstruction, 54 to 68, that's 14 years. I believe that when that electorate that elected Obama did what it did throughout the South, they said, we can't wait 30 years this time.
Or 15.
Well, we can't wait 15 years. We better shut this down right now. So what do you see? What did they attack first in the first Reconstruction? Voting rights and the courts. Second Reconstruction, when you wanted to end it, white Southern strategy. Kevin Phillips, that crowd, says we got to find a way to turn working class, poor white people against their own self-interest, and we got to find a way to lock up the voting bloc in the South. And we got to find a way to take over the courts. What did you see the day of President Obama's inauguration? Not him, not this electorate, this new possibility, these changing demographics. What are they attacking now? Voting rights and the courts. And so we are actually involved. As I said the first day we were here, you know, you can look at what happened in North Carolina as a loss, or you can go deeper and say, if the best extremists could do, after they took over state government, after they took $100 million in the light, we don't know how much in the dark, after they passed the worst redistricting plan since the 19th century and the worst voter suppression plan since the 1960s, if you do all of that, and the best you can do is win by less than 1% or less than 2%, that does not tell me you beat me. That tells me rematch. I will rematch. Because you just shot your best shot. You can't do anything else to me. The only thing you can do to me is like this little book said, where this, where's my little book? It's over here. Yeah. My little book says, and this is to the basis of a moral movement. When you need a black whale saying, if I die, at least I'm gonna die for something. Or where a Fannie Lou Hamer said, somebody told her, said they might kill you. Then she said, well, I'm dying a little bit every day by these laws. If you shoot your best shot, and that's why it's time for progressives to remember nothing we ever won. Women's suffrage, fight against slavery, fight came quickly, came without a fight, came without casualty, but we won. And so if they what else can they do, John? Voter suppression, they've done it the best deal.
Check.
Redistricting.
Check.
Check. Taking over state legislatures.
Check.
Check. Spent exorbitant, lewd, pornographic forms of money.
Double check.
Double check. According to Dollarocracy, right?
It's fine book.
That's right. I'll give you a plug on that.
Yeah.
Now, give a holiday gift to John Golden. He'll talk about mine. Now, you've done all that, and I'm still standing.
Yeah.
And the best you can do, and then on top of that, you have some Democratic candidates that don't know how to run as Democrats and progressives. That's check 3-4 times. What would happen if we get some candidates in these southern states that know how to run and know how to build this intersectionality and know how to show white people in the mountains and black people in the eastern part of the state that we are all connected together?
Whoa.
What would happen? And
we win like we won in Asheville this past. That's the story that they did.
It's a quick little one here because I got to get you on to one more thing here. But the quick one, we don't have a media in America that covers politics. If we did, people would know that one of the top members of the North Carolina legislature, a very conservative Republican, got beat, 2 of them, by grassroots candidates. Who nurtured out of your group? 2. I know, too.
People ask me, say, well, when is Maul Monday going to endorse candidates? In the places we don't endorse candidates. But we've had 2 people win.
Well, they weren't supposed to win.
Well, this is even beyond that. 2 people won, or are innocent now, who are Maul Monday arrestees. One of them won despite the fact that their opponent put me on their political ads and I wasn't even running for office.
And that wasn't done to help them.
Right, which is a sign that you know they're losing, because when you have to campaign against somebody that's not even on the ballot.
That's right.
But we had 2, in North Carolina was the only legislative body where 2 Tea Party extremists lost in state legislative races in conservative districts because of what Mountain Moral Monday did and how they got whites and blacks and Republicans and Democrats to come together around this framework. And as you said, if the nation doesn't talk about it, if some other groups, nobody's really talking about that, which is why one of the reasons what we're saying is we hope that we need, the nation had something to do with this whole first Reconstruction. I think y'all were.
You were in favor of it.
You were in favor. You did a little writing.
I wasn't writing much.
Well, but you were kind of young reporter, and I know you did something around the call, the NAACP, and we really need a Southern correspondent that can talk about what's happening not only in North Carolina, but now there's a movement going on in Alabama. There's a movement in Tennessee.
And there are roots in this stuff, but beyond the nation, I mean, I'll take all credit and blame. But beyond the nation, it was civil rights movement transformed when the New York Times and other publications started sending reporters down to the town. It matters to cover what is happening, because if you don't, you only hear about the defeats, you never hear about the victories.
Listen, that film you showed the first year of Maul Monday, where you had 13 straight Maul Mondays inside the Capitol. Now, one of them less than 2,000 people. The last one had 25,000 people in all.
Wow.
The first one outside of, and this was a rich job, I said, we're going to take the first Maul Monday outside of Raleigh to Asheville. People said, you're crazy. Al McSherry, they said, Barber, go somewhere with you. I said, no, we got to test this movement. So we went to Mitchell County. That's 99% white, 89% Republican. And some of my progressive friends said, you got to be out your mind. I said, no, we have back. They had sent for me. Now, to be quite honest, John, I first told them I wasn't going.
Really?
Because I know, I used to be human relations director, and I know where the white supremacy is. That no black folk were run out of Mitchell County in 1920, all of them were put on the train because of an alleged rape by a black man in Mitchell County. We never even thought about having a branch in the NAACP up in Mitchell County. But we went there. Had a 2-hour meeting. Did talk about Republican, Democrat, talk about these issues. At the end of this meeting, this is what they said to me. Rep. Barber, number 1, we've been coming tomorrow Monday clandestine. Number 2, we wanted to see whether or not you all were serious about being nonpartisan. Number 3, there's the Republican chair who just resigned his position as the chair of the party because he's not an extremist. He's a Teddy Roosevelt, Eisenhower, Lincoln Republican. Number 4, can we build a branch of the NAACP in Mitchell County? Now, about this time, I was about to fall out. I was like, Lord, what? You know, yeah, you know, this was some kind of miraculous stuff going on. And then 9:45 at night, they said, Rep. Barber, we need you to do one more thing. I said, what? They said, we want you to lead us on a march tonight to the Tea Party legislator's house to let him know. I said, wait a minute, white people. I said, now, you all just getting involved in civil rights. Let me give you some instruction. Black people don't march at night. No, we don't march at night now. We march in the daytime. So everybody, I said, but you come back. I said, but I tell you what, we're going to be in Asheville. Now, I had prayed for 500 to 1,000 people to show up that next day. I said, if we can get 500,000 people in Asheville, 500. 10,000 plus people showed up in Asheville.